Why don't bears wear shoes?
Why?
They prefer to be barefoot. Like that? We're putting Canon's top photography cameras, the Canon R1 and the Canon R5 Mark II, head to head in the ultimate wildlife photography showdown. Matt Zeffy with B&H here, all the way in the snow-covered landscapes of Yellowstone National Park. We've got a lot to photograph. What do you say we get started? Canon's newest powerhouses for wildlife photography, the Canon R1 and the Canon R5 Mark II, bring serious specs to the table. But which one is better for capturing wildlife in those sometimes fast-paced, unpredictable conditions? To find out, we'll put them to the test with some of Yellowstone's most iconic wildlife. Plus, throughout this video, I'll share some of my favorite photography tips to level up your wildlife photos, fun facts about these incredible animals, and hopefully not too many dad jokes. Send a rescue helicopter. That's it, I'm good. I'm set here for the day. I'm just gonna hang out. With 45 megapixels on the R5 II, we can capture incredible detail and crop in later, which is perfect for emphasizing animals within their habitat. The R1's 24 megapixel resolution might not match the R5 II in raw detail, but offers up to 40 frames per second and a suite of features that make it optimal for more fast-paced shooting. Not to mention a 9.44 million dot EVF that is just a pleasure to use. Both cameras sport a number of custom buttons that make them ideal for quick-paced changes in the field. But the R1 has the upper hand here with a few extra customizable buttons at your fingertips. And speaking of the body, the R1 of course has that built-in grip, and it's really nice to hold as it feels really robust in your hand. And yet it's worth noting that if you're someone who prefers to travel lighter, then the R5 II actually might be the better option. At the same time, the R1 definitely offers that extra durability and weather sealing, which can be critical in wildlife photography. So fast, accurate autofocus can make or break a wildlife shot, especially when tracking animals in motion. Being able to rely on your camera to make those critical adjustments and lock onto an animal's eyes is really important in the field. Each of these cameras feature Canon's new Digic Accelerator coprocessor, which dramatically improves autofocus capabilities across the board and subject recognition through that fancy term that photographers sometimes fear, AI machine learning. That said, Canon does mention the R1 has the most advanced autofocus system ever featured on an EOS body with cross-type autofocus. And I believe it is noticeable ever so slightly in the real world that the R1 does have the slight upper hand over the R5 II, all while both perform incredibly well with 100% autofocus coverage of the sensor. What's an elk's favorite type of workout?
I don't know.
Calf raises. So we were just driving down the road and we saw this tiny little white thing run across the street. I was like, oh my gosh, it's an Irwin. They're like these tiny, I don't even know how to explain them, but they are actually adorable. And in white snow like this, it's Yellowstone in a nutshell right here. And we saw them running around, just one actually, from hole to hole. And let me tell you, these guys are incredibly fast. So for that reason, I grabbed the Canon R1 immediately because I needed the extra frame rate, and I turned on the pre-shooting so that way I can get a few photos before actually hitting the shutter. So let's see what we can get here. To do the job for this, I chose to go with the R1 for the low noise and also that autofocus capabilities. The Irwin are incredibly fast and they're just popping up from, it's just one, but it's just popping up from hole to hole right now. So I think this is the best tool for the job, especially because it's getting kind of dark right now. Early morning and late evenings are prime time for wildlife photography because that's when the light is nicest and when all of the wildlife is out. So for this, I'd recommend aiming for that golden hour or even blue hour. But this also pushes cameras to their limits, especially when we dip into the blue hour and beyond, where fast lenses become all the more necessary. So pairing that with a camera that can handle noise well is super important. The R5 II with its high megapixel sensor resolves more detail, but at the cost of perhaps some noise in low light conditions. While the R1 on the other hand, certainly not a low megapixel camera, but because it is lower than the R5 II, definitely can handle those low light scenarios even better. Both cameras can handle low light really well and mitigate unwanted noise, with the edge here given to the R1 because of that 24 megapixel sensor. With our high resolution image, any unwanted noise that does get into frame can easily be dealt with in post, and the same can even be said for getting a larger image with the detail out of these cameras from the R1. Oh, on the hill. That's beautiful. One of the most exciting features of both of these cameras is the addition of pre-capture, which saves frames before you even fully press the shutter. So photographing this coyote in front of us, it's actually quite a ways out. I'm using the pre-capture function on the R1 right now because it's howling and I don't really know when it's about to howl. So the pre-capture on this camera will take a few photos when I'm half pressing the shutter. And if I fully press the shutter, it'll register those photos and save them onto the cards. And those photos from the last half second are registered and saved onto the cards. Or if I want to clear the pre-capture cache, I just let go of the shutter and they're cleared out, and then I have less photos to deal with in post. Canon R1 can store over a half second of pre-capture at 20 frames per second, meaning it can save 20 frames before the shutter is pressed. Canon R5 II can store 15 frames, capturing 10 frames per second before the press as well. Now that's all at max continuous frame rate as well, so at a slower shooting speed, it can buffer even more frames in pre-capture. So another mission critical feature for wildlife photography is the blackout free shutter. And thankfully, both of these cameras offer that. So when you're tracking fast moving animals, you still maintain view at all times. Now that said, the buffer of these two cameras does differ slightly, which also can be mission critical in the field because you don't want to be waiting on that. Buffer is essentially the amount of photos that can be stored and before writing to the memory cards, so that way you can continuously shoot and take advantage of these super high frame rate cameras. All right, so we finally lucked out with a close encounter with a coyote, and it's actually got a little bit of blood. It must have just been hunting or something, because it's got some blood on the bottom of its mouth. I chose to go with the R5 II for this scene for just the sheer 45 megapixels, and the blackout free shutter right now is really important because to track this coyote as it's moving through this environment would be so hard to do if it was flickering black the entire time, and if I was having to buffer images as well, because every time it looks at me or howls, I'm taking constant images. Oh, that looks incredible. And the light, you can't ask for better light than this right now. It's absolutely beautiful. And we're getting some steam coming out of the coyote's mouth as well. That was awesome. Let's talk about how these cameras handle handheld shooting, and particularly their in-body stabilization, since both of them feature IBIS. Not every wildlife photographer wants to lug around a massive tripod, and admittedly, I love photographing wildlife handheld sometimes for the quick-paced nature of it. But both of these cameras have up to 8.5 stops of correction in the center of the frame, especially when paired with the stabilized compatible lenses. And this is extremely impressive in the field, opening the opportunity to ditch those tripods or just roll with a monopod for more flexibility. All right, I've got the R5 II and a 100 to 500 zoom lens on right now. But I just want to, again, point attention to just how stable this lens and the camera is together. I'm just hand holding right now. I'm going by hand and using the camera as stabilizer, and through the trees, the R5 II is just locking on to the eye of the moose here. Man, that was sick. At the end of the day, image quality doesn't stop in the field. It continues in post. With higher resolution of the R5 Mark II and better noise control on the R1, Taking a look at how these compare, we are getting about what we expected out of both of these cameras, with the R1 showing less noise and the R5 II showing more detail. But interestingly enough, using some post-processing, we can minimize any unwanted noise with ease, narrowing the playing field between these two cameras. We're looking for otters right now. We ought to find one any second. So which of these cameras is better for wildlife photography? Well, like many things in photography, it all comes down to personal preference, shooting style, and really which aspects are more important to you. So if you're someone who crops into your wildlife photos a lot, whether it be for different compositions or just to get closer to wildlife, and someone who wants just the raw detail from a 45 megapixel sensor, well, then the Canon EOS R5 Mark II is a clear winner here. And if you're someone who wants a balance of detail versus low light performance and handling of noise because of the nature of a 24 megapixel sensor, then the Canon EOS R1 is the way to go. Not to mention the better handling, that incorporated grip, increased battery life, dual CFB slots, and perhaps the best EVF I've ever seen. Both of these cameras deliver incredible results, and pair that with Canon's lineup of RF telephoto lenses, and you've got yourself two wildlife powerhouses. But what do you think? Are you going with the R5 II or the R1? Let me know down in the comments. My name is Matt, and thanks for watching.